With the new My Lowe's Pro Rewards American Express card, earn 3 points per dollar spent on Lowe's qualifying purchases for the first 6 months after card account opening. Plus, save 5% every day on eligible purchases at Lowe's and earn points on eligible purchases everywhere else Amex is accepted. Card members get more at Lowe's. Subject to credit approval. 5% can't be combined with any other offer. Exclusions and restrictions apply. Points subject to loyalty terms at Lowe's.com/terms and credit reward terms at Synchrony.com/MLPRA-terms. Visit Lowe's.com/business credit.
Looking for these better days.
It is Wednesday, June 3rd. I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's what you need to know to make today a better day. A historic Game 1 comeback in the Stanley Cup Final as Vegas takes a 1-0 series lead. And tonight, the NBA Finals get underway. We're going to talk some championship series on this episode of Better Day presented by FanDuel. And we start with the Golden Knights' 2-goal rally, meaning they were down 2 goals, to rally to beat the Carolina Hurricanes 5-4 last night, taking Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. How historic was this come-from-behind win for the Vegas Golden Knights? And by the way, come-from-behind wins are nothing new to VGK. The amount of times that they've come back, the amount of times that they've scored late in a third period, they're never out of any game. And that's what makes this team just so dangerous. I mean, remember the game against Colorado? They were down 3-0 at the end of the first period. They come back to win that game. Like, Vegas has been the most resilient team that we have seen in these Stanley Cup playoffs, and that's why I think that they will go on to win this series. But last night, Vegas became the first road team to come from multiple goals down to win a Stanley Cup Final game number 1. That's right. Entering yesterday, road teams were 0-55 when down multiple goals at any point during Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Carolina was up 2-0 with about 12 minutes to go in the first period, and then Vegas rallies, gets a goal, and they pull within 1. Vegas took a lead early in the third period. Carolina came back to tie it, and Tomas Hertl got the game winner with under 4 minutes to go in regulation, 5-4. The final last night in what was an uncharacteristic high-scoring game between these two teams. You know, everything that you saw and you read and you predicted going into this series showed that it was going to be a low-scoring series. You looked at Carolina and how great they were at blocking shots and limiting the chances for the opposition. You looked at Vegas and how physical that they have been and how great Carter Hart has been here in these playoffs, and Frederik Andersen as well on the other side for Carolina, and every stat pointed to a low-scoring series. Well, what was it, 25 seconds into the series, Nikolai Ehlers scores the first goal, and then he scores his second one 8 minutes later, or no, it was like 12 minutes later, right? Because it was 12:08 when they were up 2-0. But it was a very, very high-scoring game. And, you know, it's funny, before the series started, I was looking at the prop bets and some of the special bets across a variety of sports books. And one that I actually bet at minus 220, believe it or not, was no game in this series to feature 10 goals. And the fact that they were, I mean, at 4-4 at the end of regulation, I'm like, all right, at least I know there's not going to be 10 goals. But when Vegas scored and made it 5-4, I was literally sweating out that in game 1 of this series, I was going to lose that bet because either VGK was going to get the empty netter and win 6-4, or Carolina was going to tie it and it was going to wind up being an 11-goal game. But 5-4, the finish, 9 goals in this series. And now you wonder, are the sportsbooks going to adjust for game number 2? Well, if we're looking at the market right now, it hasn't just yet. Up on FanDuel for game number 2 coming up tomorrow night, Carolina a minus 162 favorite, because that's them in the bounce back spot looking to even up the series. The total remains at 5.5. It is juiced at minus 132 to the over. Now, if you're wondering, how do the favorites do in game number 2 of a Stanley Cup Final after losing game number 1 as that home favorite? Well, believe it or not, it has only happened 2 other times in the database where it is the Stanley Cup Final, home team lost as the favorite in game number 1. They're home favorites again here in game number 2. The Lightning, both times in 2015 and in 2020, lost game number 1, and they came back both times to win game number 2. So 2-0 straight up, And 0-2, though, on the puck line. A 4-3 win for the Lightning over the Blackhawks in 2015. A 3-2 win for the Lightning over the Stars in 2019. And the games are 1-0-1 to the over. Now, going through the database, forgetting about what round it is in the playoffs and just saying in all rounds of the playoffs, home favorites that lose game number one and then are home favorite again in game number two, obviously, are 70 and 45 straight up. So 60.9% on the money line. This goes back to 2008, and the games are, 50-50 to the totals. So nothing to think about there. But that's where Carolina is in the bounce back spot. This is where they were when they lost for the first time here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, losing to the Canadiens in game one of the Eastern Conference Finals. They bounced back to win game two, but it was not easy. That was an overtime game, a game in which they took a 1-0 lead and then Montreal tied it, and it was back and forth. And they were actually the team. I think Montreal did score in the third period to tie that one game before I think Ehlers did get the game winner in overtime. He's got like 3 game winners so far here in these playoffs. But taking a look at last night's goal scorers, you had Ehlers scoring twice, Shea Theodore for the Golden Knights, Ivan Barbashev, William Karlsson, Brett Howden, and Tomas Hertl for VGK. Other goal scorers for Carolina, Jordan Stahl and Shane Gostisbehere, leading point scorer last night. So if we're just looking at the points from last night, Shea Theodore had 3 points, 1 goal and 2 assists. Brett Howden had a goal and an assist for Carolina. Ehlers, we know, with the 2 goals. Jalen Chatfield on defense had 2 assists. So if you're looking at your leading point scorers, those are your guys right now. Shea Theodore with 3 points leading the series right now. Our Taylor Hall bet, or Taylor Hall sprinkle, if you will, no points last night. He only had 2 shots on goal, 3 missed shots, but Taylor Hall was our sprinkle to lead the series in points, but no points in game number 1. Here is your updated Conn Smythe odds, courtesy of the FanDuel Sportsbook. Mitch Marner of VGK is your favorite at -115. Frederick Anderson, goaltender of Carolina, +350. Taylor Hall of Carolina, 10-1. Jack Eichel of the Golden Knights, 10-1. Logan Stankoven, +1300. Jackson Blake, +2,000. Nikolai Ehlers, who had 2 goals last night and several game winners throughout these playoffs, 25-1. Shea Theodore, who had a goal and 2 assists last night, is at 50-1. Carter Hart at 30-1, goaltender of VGK. I still think it's anybody's award, like, if I'm being honest. Like, I think certainly last night was not a good night for the goaltenders. Carter Hart made 23 saves on 27 shots, and Frederick Anderson 18 saves on 23 shots. Not a great night for the goaltenders. But Mitch Marner, it's not like he lit up the scoreboard, right? Mitch Marner, who is the favorite, he did have an assist, and if that assist is good enough, well, then that's going to be certainly the thing that puts him maybe over the top. Like, okay, he's the leading point scorer here in these playoffs. He added a point last night. That's certainly going to help his case. I still think this series is a long ways from being over. I still like the over 5.5 games. And so we'll wait and see how game 2 plays itself out. Updated market up on FanDuel, though. The over 5.5, believe it or not, look at this. With Carolina losing game 1 and the expected bounce back in game 2, the over 5.5 is -220. Hope you got in on the ground floor in that one.
What would you do if your online store converted 36% more shoppers? You could take 36% more vacation.
Another pina colada?
Yes, please.
Open a new retail location with 36% more square feet.
Fantastic.
Hire 36% more help.
You're hired and you're hired.
Shopify has the world's best converting checkout, up to 36% better than other e-commerce platforms. What you do with those extra sales is up to you. Switch to Shopify today at shopify.com/listen and get a $1 trial. Shopify.com/listen.
From the Stanley Cup Final to the NBA Finals we go, where we have already done extensive previews of this NBA Finals. We talked about it from a Knicks perspective. We talked about it from a Spurs perspective. Here's your updated market up on FanDuel right now. The Spurs 4.5-point favorites at home tonight against the Knicks. Total of 218.5, so no movement at the FanDuel Sportsbook from where we were the past couple of days. And the more that I have thought about this series, the more that I don't want to sound like a homer. I just really think the Knicks are being underrated here. And with all due respect to the San Antonio Spurs, who were super impressive getting by the Oklahoma City Thunder, it never felt like the Oklahoma City Thunder were right in that series. And there was that one game, and yes, we can talk about how they punted games away in that series, and maybe they shouldn't, but yes, they did it, and that's what teams do in the NBA playoffs. But remember, there was that one game, we talked about it afterwards, when we looked at the box score and the limited amount of three-pointers and just the weird amount of, playing time and lack of shots for some players, and they just didn't look like themselves. And it wasn't just Jalen Williams and his injury and other missing pieces. No, it was just the Thunder were not themselves. This was not the same team that we saw in last year's playoffs. SGA had a phenomenal game 7, but it wasn't enough. Wemby was better, and the Spurs were deeper, younger, deeper, hungrier. And going up against the Knicks team, that youth, okay, that might be an X factor in a positive way. I think maybe some of the inexperience will be an X factor in a negative way. Wemby certainly is ready for the moment. I do think that the Spurs will have, a little bit of a home court advantage. I can see a lot of Knicks fans in attendance there in San Antonio because keep in mind, the ticket prices for the games at Madison Square Garden are out of control. Literally, I heard somebody, I think it was Mitch Moss on VSiN, was talking about how it might, or it might have been Kelly Bidlin, I'm not sure. Someone on VSiN was talking about how it's actually cheaper to buy a ticket to a game in San Antonio and buy a round trip flight from New York to San Antonio than it is to get into Madison Square Garden for games 3 or 4. So I actually think there will be some Knicks fans in attendance in games 1 and 2. And yes, as much as Wemby is he is the best player on the floor. Is he the most clutch player on the floor? Now, a lot of people like to think, what is clutch? What are clutch minutes? What does it matter if maybe a player is often not in a clutch situation? How do we measure that? I mean, look at the New York Knicks. In their winning streak, they're blowing teams out, right? All these double digit wins, they're just not in close games. Like game 1 against Cleveland, they came back from 22 down to win. But every other game, and looking at the games against Philly as well, and the last couple of wins against Atlanta, they're blowing out everybody. So there is no clutch minutes to even talk about for the New York Knicks. Like literally, I think if we look at Jalen Brunson the entirety of this postseason, I want to say has he even played any clutch minutes? Maybe like a couple of clutch minutes so far here. But I mean, well, yeah, because there were a couple of games that obviously the 2 losses by 1 point. So, but in the regular season, see, this is what I wanted to look at. In the regular season this year, Jalen Brunson played 118.8 clutch minutes, the 24th most in the NBA. In those minutes, Jalen Brunson scored 116 points. That is almost 1 point a minute in clutch time here in the regular season. Now, Victor Wembanyama, I got to give him credit as well because he is almost a point per minute guy as well in clutch moments. But as I mentioned, Jalen Brunson with 118.8 clutch minutes, Wemby only played 80.3 clutch minutes here in the regular season. And all this might be noise, but I bring this up to just say, if the game was on the line and you had to put the ball in somebody's hands on the final possession, as crazy as it might sound because of how great Victor Wembanyama is and how there's so many different ways that he can score with his height and his shooting range as well, I think I trust Jalen Brunson more in these clutch moments because he's been in them more often. And look, I've already bet the Knicks in game number 1. But I think the Knicks can win this series as close as this should be. And I do think it's a long series. Like the best bet for me is over 5.5 games. But I also think the Knicks at plus 1.5 games at minus 155 is the best bet because they either win this series or they lose it in 7 in San Antonio. As for tonight's game, obviously, already, as I mentioned, I'm on the Knicks plus the 4.5. The 5s are gone. It is plus 4.5 everywhere right now, total of 218.5. I'm going to be looking at some player props, and specifically for Jalen Brunson. I think I'm going to look at Jalen Brunson three-pointers, and we know how many threes he's taken in 3 games against the Spurs this year, 5, 12, and 7 three-point attempts against the Spurs in those 3 games, and one of them being the NBA Cup championship game. But give me Jalen Brunson over 2.5 threes tonight. So 3+ made three-pointers up on FanDuel. You actually get plus money, plus 132 for Brunson tonight. And that might be my best bet for a player prop. We'll certainly have more player props for tonight's game number 1 available to Better Day Insider and premium members, maybe a live better too, as we watch game number 1 of the NBA Finals tonight between the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs. It is a Wednesday in Major League Baseball, which means we have some day games, which means we have some sweep avoidance systems. 4 teams looking to avoid the sweep today, and despite last week not going so well with all the overs in Major League Baseball, still on the season, teams looking to avoid the 3-game sweep, 71, 47, and 4 to the under. That is 61% to the under. You are profitable to the tune of $1,918 if you just bet every under in these games. However, it's becoming very difficult to bet unders now in baseball with the weather getting warmer. It appears maybe there's some pitcher fatigue around the league. Balls are flying out of the ballpark. As I mentioned, we just saw an incredible over weekend in Major League Baseball, and even last night we had a bunch of overs. We had a bunch of, unders as well, but, a lot of runs just being scored around Major League Baseball. I mean, last night, Mariners at Mets supposed to be a low-scoring game. Mariners just keep homering. 11 runs were scored in that game, 11 runs in the Dodgers game, 10 in the Angels game, 16 in the Astros game. Like, we've been on an incredible overrun here for the past week or so in Major League Baseball. But here are your 4 teams looking to avoid the sweep today. Maybe look at some selective unders. We'll see. Cardinals take on the Rangers. Adrian Palante for the Cardinals. Mackenzie Gore goes for the Rangers. White Sox against the Twins. Eric Fetty for the White Sox. Taj Bradley for the Twins. Rays against the Tigers. Nick Martinez for the Rays. Troy Melton for the Tigers. And the Nationals against the Marlins. Andrew Alvarez for the Nationals. And Max Meyer goes for the Marlins. So be selective. Maybe there's a couple of unders that we can pick apart from those games. Also tonight, Garrett Cole takes the mound for the New York Yankees for his 3rd start of the season. In his first start against Tampa Bay, he went 6 shutout innings. He had 2 strikeouts and 3 walks. And in his second start against Kansas City, he was masterful. 6 2/3 innings, shutout ball, only 4 hits allowed, 10 strikeouts, and 0 walks. Garrett Cole fully stretched out, ready to go here in his 3rd start of the season tonight when the Yankees host the Cleveland Guardians. New York minus 163 right now up on FanDuel. That'll wrap up this quick edition of Better Day. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have a full breakdown of game number 1 of the NBA Finals, a preview of game number 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. We will get into some football as we progress throughout the weeks and month, because obviously the big news with the trades the other day and even some rumors around the NFL. Is Aaron Donald going to make a return? We'll see about that. But also practices, mini camps, OTAs, things getting underway, and then eventually we will get into training camps and whatnot, and just a lot of excitement for us here at Better Day when it comes to football season. Just really can't wait for everything that we are building and everything that we're going to be doing as a part of our football coverage this year. As a reminder, you can follow us on social media at Better_Day on Twitter. Follow the Better Day YouTube page. Coming up later on this afternoon, Colby Marchio and Jake Hassan will be streaming their Off the Board podcast. So make sure you guys check that out. And if you want to listen to it later, you can listen to it right here on this Better Day podcast feed. I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's hoping you make today and every day a better day.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.